Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning into today's broadcast. It's the Wednesday, June 10th, 2026 episode of the Marco Dure Show, the only show where the facts are facts and hard truths thrive. It's the middle of our week already, but no shortage of great articles to examine, folks. The big news from yesterday evening was that we, the United States, have resumed our strikes on Iran over the AH-64 Apache helicopter that went down just right by the Strait of Hormuz in the Gulf of Oman. We'll talk about that in just a little bit. The other big story, though, taking place today was the verdict of the Karmelo Anthony case that was given to us yesterday evening. And Anthony was found guilty, sentenced to 35 years in prison for the murder of Austin Metcalf during a high school track event in Frisco, Texas, back in April of 2025. Now, this verdict was the case apparently over self-defense, which I really don't see that in any situation we've been presented with, at least. But it also brings up the issue of youth violence, racial tension, this bifurcation of fact and truth that we're seeing right now. It's really an unfortunate case all around. I consider 2 lives have completely been ruined from this event that took place last year. And really, it was just a senseless murder that did not have to take place at all. Now, why this took place, what was the bigger motive behind it, nobody really knows. But I'm just shocked by the way people are acting about this. You had Karmelo Anthony, a black teen, sitting in an event under a tent of another team. Now, why he's there in the first place, I have no idea. Why he brought a knife to a high school track event, again, I have no idea. I was a high school and college athlete. I've never seen anybody bringing a knife to an event, let alone using it. Never heard of anything like that in my life. Certainly not in the 10 years of my coaching had I ever heard of anything like that as well. So that begs the question, why are you doing this? Why are you bringing a knife to this event? Why are you sitting in a section with a team that's not yours? Why, when you were asked to leave, you chose to stay there if you felt that your life was threatened in a single way? It doesn't make any sense. You take out a knife when someone pushes you and stabs them in the heart, and people think that this is a proper response to that? I think that's the biggest takeaway from this. The people that are trying to legitimize this type of response to something. This shouldn't be a white-black issue at all. Now, whether Anthony went there to purposely do this, we really don't know. But the response from people that are trying to justify this type of behavior is the reason why we continue to see this in America today. We all know that if the roles were reversed, this group of people would probably be saying the exact opposite. Oh, somebody shoves you and you stab them in the heart? What is this? And that would be the proper response to it, though. Again, I'm shocked by people's behavior outside the courtroom, but I don't even want to play you the audio from it. It's just too painful to listen to. The way people present themselves in public, the lack of humility, the lack of respect, just the lack of decency. So I'm not going to play it for you. Most of it is profane written anyways. I don't want to play it for you. It's too much. Most of it's gibberish. Doesn't make any sense. Certainly not based on any reality, folks. But this is the problem. You have people that are going out and acting like this to show people, look at we're in unity behind this. Again, I'm appalled by this. A teenager stabbed in the heart. Doesn't matter if he's white, black, from this country, from another country. Doesn't matter. Decency. That's what we should be talking about here. Decency was in this trial. Now, again, 35 years in prison. He might get off with doing half under good behavior. Again, who knows if that'll take place. I'm sure it will be a rough ride for him ahead of the way he's going right now. But what I found interesting, too, about this case The mother was leaving in a Acura sedan. Nice car, by the way. Not too shabby. And she yells out the window, "Racist, biased." That's what she yelled out from her car window as she's passing by this group of people, these so-called protesters, outside of the courtroom in McKinney, Texas yesterday, just outside of Dallas. And again, this group's already riled up. The chant appeared to start among the crowd of mostly black supporters who gathered ahead of the Tuesday's verdict in this murder trial. And it didn't take the jury very long. It took them about 2.5, 3 hours to come to the conclusion that Karmelo Anthony was indeed guilty, and this was not a self-defense case. But I mean, this response from the parents, where's the accountability for your son? So your son should go out and stab people in the heart if he's shoved? That's the proper response if you're shoved at any time in life, is to stab someone to death. How do you reconcile with this? And by the way, I don't encourage anybody to go to these protests, courthouses, engage with these people. Truth and fact don't matter to them. They've already made up their mind. To them, it's a white and black issue. Again, I hate to tell it to you like that, but that's clearly what it is. The type of rhetoric that we're hearing coming from some people. Again, I'm not going to repeat some of it. It's very, very sickening to hear this. People proud to come out and say this in public. It's awful. It really is. We should always strive for the truth, folks. That's the purpose of this. The truth. What really took place that day, and was it justified? Doesn't matter if you're white or black. But this case clearly, for these people, these certain protesters who were shocked that he was found guilty, now claiming there's no justice, the systemic racism, of course, that you're hearing all the typical tropes from these people. Listen, we're tired of this nonsense. If someone is guilty, and by the way, if I told you the races were reversed here, it was, a white kid sitting in a tent and he got up and stabbed a black athlete after being told to leave, I'd say the same thing. This is ridiculous behavior. It's uncalled for. It's unjustifiable. It lacks no proper response to anything. I mean, this is your response when someone shoves you to take out a knife and stab somebody. Again, I'm beside myself, again, as a teacher, as a coach, to hear something like this today in America. A young man's life is over. It's never coming back. Again, I don't know how you find justice for that. Again, we could try to make up ways to do so. Life imprisonment, death penalty, you name it. Nothing brings back Austin Metcalf's life. And on top of that, Karmelo Anthony's life is over. Over. If he does the full 35 years, he'll be out when he's roughly, 35-ish? 35? 54? 53? Maybe something like that. It's unbelievable. It's a waste of life, folks, and it doesn't have to be that way. But what we've done in this country, we've made a justice system that at times kowtows to people because of race. We've seen this time and time again. But thankfully in Texas, the case held up yesterday. Again, we're seeing... Again, I don't know why you would spend your Tuesday afternoon doing this outside of a courthouse, especially for somebody you don't know. But this is what it is. And what they're trying to say is that the jury was rigged. Yep, the jury had to be rigged because it had no black people on it. But let me just point out to you the black people that were considered for the jury. One of the individuals said that he could not think he would be able to put a brother in jail. So if that's your position, again, that's, you can have whatever position you want. Do you belong on a jury? Of course not. Just like if I were on a jury and I said, hey, could never see myself finding a white person guilty of any crime. Obviously, they're not going to put you on. You're not a reasonable person. You're not a real candidate to sit on the jury. Now, again, it was a mostly white jury. I won't deny you that. One of the individuals was said to be Latino Hispanic. Again, that could be mixed race, of course. But they're very miffed that there were no black people on this jury. And that's where they come around with the racism, systemic racism, unjustified bias, this and that. The facts are all there. It took them 2.5 hours to look at this and say, listen, this is a clear-cut case. This person was somewhere where he should have been. He was carrying a weapon he should not have had on him. He was asked to leave multiple times. I'm told 15 different times. Telling people, I think he said at one point, make me, or something along those lines. Austin Metcalf shoves him, and then he gets stabbed in the chest and dies. That is not a justifiable, that's not self-defense. That's nothing of that. That goes well beyond self-defense, folks. And sadly, this is the way kids are acting today. Again, I've never heard anything like this in my life. Never heard anything like this. And again, you have to look at the case and just say to yourself, why is this happening in America today? Because we hyper-focus everything on race. This DEI crap. Affirmative action. All these things that are hyper-focused on the race of an individual. What did Martin Luther King Jr. tell us? The content of one's character is what we should be looking at, not the race of that individual. And we're looking at the content of Karmelo Anthony's character right now. And this is the way he responded. Now, I don't know his past. I don't believe he had any priors to this, but it's odd when a teenager in high school would respond in a way like this and kill somebody. There's no going back from that. No going back from that. But our society, everything, BLM, all these different movements, Antifa, focusing on race as always the sole issue. When George Floyd died, there was no sign of racism anywhere. And by the way, there was no sign that he was even murdered by the police. We've come to find that out later on, of course. We're looking at things that, for example, the toxicology report. We know he had multiple different drugs in him that were well over the lethal dosage level in his system. No bruising in the neck, but it didn't matter at that point because Derek Chauvin had to be found guilty. And the only way they do that is, again, just because he's a white cop. Now, if he were a black cop, do you think anyone would really give a damn about this? Of course not. Of course not. And of course, they wanted to have an anti-police protest, of course, that added to all that. Again, it fuels right into everything they want. Taking down this system. Now, does that mean there's not racial crimes in this country? Yes, of course there are. But the fact that we're this focused on race today, this is not just a product of, again, happenstance. This is a product of, again, the news media, professors in schools, entertainers, actors, whatever you call it, always being focused on race. This is what it comes down to. And then this is why you're seeing protesters like this. This is the reason why. Not because Karmelo Anthony, they know he's not innocent. I mean, they can say self-defense as much as they'd like. There's no sign of self-defense whatsoever. And it didn't even meet the state standard for that at all. Now, again, Texas might be different than New York or, again, Illinois or Minneapolis or California. But this is no good, folks. This is no good. Instead of coming together as a people as we were until Barack Obama became president, we're seeing this bifurcation of the country in terms of race, again. And again, it's been fomented through Black Lives Matter. A lot of these cases with, again, fomented, taken out of context completely. And again, most of the time it was against police officers, of course. The police are racist. The police are white supremacists. Again, you name it. Any way they can take down the police because they want an uncivil society. The people in that protest don't really probably give a damn. They don't even know Karmelo Anthony. No, I haven't got any information that they were paid to be there. That's always a possibility. But the idea that you go out and behave in such a manner, such a vitriolic manner, and make a complete ass of yourself on camera, saying some vile things, especially one of the individuals there, this man that was there, if you want to call him that, just these comments about white people. I mean, it's unbelievable. And no one says a damn thing about it. Nobody seems to care. Of course, again, we know if the roles were reversed, that person would lose their job. They'd be exiled from society, things of that nature. You can't live in a society like this, folks. It just doesn't work out. And I think right now, most people are sick of the nonsense, We want to see justice, of course, in any situation, but we're done kowtowing because of somebody's race. We got to let somebody off because of their race. They're a minority. That's what we keep hearing now. They're a person of color. I'm sorry, what does that have to do with their actions, ladies and gentlemen? Did they not make the decision? Of course they did. Now, Karmelo Anthony made a wrong decision. May not even be the one he wanted to have, but he still made that decision. There's no going back on that once you cross over that line. And as I told you before, 2 lives were ruined yesterday. Karmelo Anthony's and Austin Metcalf, obviously, who lost his life last year. And it's a horrible case, folks. It's horrible to see that this exists in society today. Again, you never see things like this. Not until Obama came into office and he started to foment, my son would look like Trayvon. I heard one of the protesters mention Trayvon Martin's name. Yeah, the same Trayvon Martin who approached George Zimmerman, attacked him, was smashing his head into cement, and was fatally shot afterwards. After somebody who he was talking to encouraged him to go and accost George Zimmerman, who was following him because he didn't know who he was. Now, again, I'm not saying George Zimmerman should have done that, but doesn't give you the right to smash somebody's head into pavement and accost them. But again, this is the narrative. Again, they thought George Zimmerman was a white guy. He turned out to be an Afro-Peruvian, half-German guy. So the case kind of fell on itself there. But the Trayvon Martin thing's what brought up BLM, of course. We see the rise of Antifa yet again in this country. And these groups are fomenting on things like race, things like the police. And it just keeps getting worse and worse as time goes on. We have to look at ourselves by our character, folks. We have to look at ourselves and say, is this the proper way to act in a civil society? And the answer, of course, is the way some of these people are acting is appalling to me, that an adult would act like this in public. First and foremost, again, sometimes I can't even believe this. But we've got to look at where we are as a people, where we are as a nation, where we are as one nation under God. Where are we? Things are not getting better. They're getting much, much worse. And a lot of it I blame on the news media, particularly. A lot of it I blame on the lies told about history. That's another big faction in all of this. But we're even seeing, if we go across the pond, we go across to places like the UK and Ireland. Look at this case coming out of Front Page magazine. There was video footage of a man from Somalia in Belfast attempting to behead a young British man in the street. Now, thankfully, the Somali man has been arrested. I'm shocked to see that, especially in Ireland, on the suspicion of attempted murder with a knife. The guy slashed this guy's face, his neck, his back, laying on top of him, attacking him. This is a brutal attack beyond any measure. Again, trying to behead somebody in public. What kind of society survives this, folks? I say this to you sincerely. And I know we have people of all different races in this country that feel that Karmelo Anthony was justified yesterday. There were people on the other side, again, all race. I saw a black gentleman there and one of the protests, speaking out for justice for Austin Metcalf. I mean, again, we can't paint everybody with the same brush. Let's be very clear on that one. But this idea that we can live like this when people act in such a heinous way towards others. Now, I don't know what would prompt this attack. Is this self-defense too? Will they try to use that in the Ireland courts? God only knows. Of course, now it's racist to, again, exist in the UK, especially if you're a white person. You definitely don't want to do that. Look what happened to that poor gentleman who was stabbed by the Muslim invader in their country. I believe his name was Henry Novak, if I'm not mistaken. Forgive me if I'm wrong. Stabbed by this guy, the brother of the assailant, says, hey, let's call the police and tell them that we had a racist attack hurled by this guy. The police will call him up and, arrest this guy. Sure enough, they get there. Well, mate, you don't look like you're stabbed. Hey, let's put these cuffs on you, mate. Well, we'll try to give you some CPR later, mate, even though you've been stabbed to death and you're bleeding out in front of us. There we go. This is the UK for us. They're more worried about racism, especially if it's a white person, of course. If it's anyone else, then it's totally fine. And don't give me that nonsense that you can only be racist if you're white. Give me a break with that. Racism is an idea in your head that your race is somehow better than everybody else's race. What we're seeing now is violence predicated on that racism. Now, whatever prompted this attack in Belfast, I'm sure I don't know. Maybe this is how they live in Somalia. This is how they solve things, maybe. They get angry, they take the machete out and, hack away. I don't know. You cannot combine a culture that has values like that. And that's not to say people from Somalia can't come and assimilate inside the United States or the West at all, but you cannot bring in droves of people who act like that. It's never going to work out. They will never assimilate. They'll never become an Irishman or a Brit or French or Italian. It just isn't going to work. So when you open the floodgates in the EU and say everybody needs to start taking in people from the Middle East, from Africa, have at it, look what's happening to Europe now. It's in complete decline. There is no civility in that society anymore. Just isn't there. Now, I'm told this man in Belfast is still alive, thankfully. Again, I don't know what the outcome will be. But we need justice for people that are, again, going out and doing these heinous acts. Again, doesn't matter what race you are. If you're acting in such a way that is so just abhorrent, you need to be held accountable for this. And this is the way the United States needs to move forward from now. There is no way we can live in a society where, if you're this race, we'll easily just slap the cuffs on you. Right? We see this all throughout Europe too, by the way. People raping other women and whatnot. They get a slap on the wrist. They get probation for a couple months. Someone else does it, they get thrown in jail for 15 years. They're a native citizen of the country. You can't have a society based on that. All that does is sow more division, and it will create strife in the community. That's what it'll be. And we're seeing this, by the way, we're seeing this in Ireland already, especially when these immigrant invaders act in a way that is unjust. I'll just put it to you that way. And people are starting to take that in their own hands now. I'm not saying they're going on killing people. Don't misunderstand me. But they're definitely standing up to these people that are accosting people, that are threatening people. And these people have had enough. You're seeing it take place in the UK right now. They've had enough of this nonsense. Remember, when you move to a different country, when you immigrate to a new country, you are a guest in that country. That's what Arnold Schwarzenegger always said. You're a guest when you enter a new country. And you've got to give back to that country. You have to assimilate to those values of that country because you are the guest. But we don't see that anymore. We're told, oh, no, everyone just take what you had where you came from, speak the same language you spoke, don't try to assimilate. Hey, don't worry about it. We'll print a ballot in your native language for you. Keep the same values. Don't stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance. You can hate the United States. That's totally fine. Doesn't work, folks. Just doesn't work. Like Teddy Roosevelt said, we have but one flag, and that is the American flag. And we have one language, and that is the English language. We have one culture, and that is the American culture. We are governed with our Constitution, folks. That is our governing body. Life, liberty, and freedom. You have no right to take somebody's life, liberty, or their freedom. And when we stop holding people accountable, when there's no accountability, or for instance, if there's simply people that just can't sustain themselves, they have no autonomy over themselves or their actions, these people don't belong in society. There's just no other way for me to tell it to you, folks. I'll tell it to you how it is. Again, this is a tragic case. And again, as time goes on, we see these things in schools and events. And it's, again, from a former teacher standpoint, it's very, very troubling to see this. It's nothing anybody would like to see. I do want to move on, though, to another area of the great continent of Europe, the UK, folks. This comes from Slay News. It says UK government moves to mandate digital ID on every smartphone. Well, isn't that great? Maybe they can track some of these criminals in the streets that they've allowed into the country. Now, Britain's globalist Labour Party, run by Sir Keir Starmer, is now facing a mounting amount of criticism after leaked plans revealed proposals that could force millions of its citizens now to verify their identity in order to access the internet and use smartphones without any restrictions. Again, I want you to hear this yet again. Their plan, and I've read this to you in the past, a couple months ago, I know I did. They want a digital ID for every single person in the country. Why? Because, again, they can control you. They can monitor you at all times. I mean, this is like Larry Ellison's wet dream. This is exactly what they want inside the United States. And by the way, we already know they spy on us all the time, too. So we shouldn't act foolish like they don't. But we have in our Constitution, we have a Fourth Amendment right. We have the right to be secure in our persons, our papers. We have the right to privacy. Do we have any access to opt out of this illegal spying from these big tech companies? Of course we don't. So where the hell's SCOTUS on this? Where are the lawsuits on these big tech companies? Where are they? I'd love to see them. Now, this is being presented as a child safety measure. The plans would dramatically expand age verification requirements, though, however, raising concerns that the UK is now moving towards a de facto digital ID system for everyday online activity. By the way, Keir Starmer has come out in support of this many, many times in the past as well. But critics are now warning what begins as age checks for children could easily evolve into a nationwide identification regime affecting every adult internet user. Absolutely. This is what they want. This is how they get you. We know in Australia, they said, hey, if you don't get that shot, you don't get that COVID shot, you don't have that health passport, either in digital form or on paper, you don't get to work. You have no right to work. This is in Australia, folks. You talk about tyranny. 100% tyranny. Absolutely 100%. So the UK seems to be going down this downward spiral again. And again, it brings me no satisfaction to tell you this, that the nation that gave us the Magna Carta, the English Bill of Rights, which greatly, again, influenced the U.S. Constitution, of course, our Declaration of Independence, among other documents. This is very troubling. And by the way, what happens when you travel to the UK? Do you have to be under constant surveillance with your iPhone? Look where we are headed, folks. This doesn't lead to more freedom. This leads to more tyranny. This is how it starts. Starts off slow. Age verification. Then the age verification gets a little bit higher, and a little bit higher. Then all of a sudden, it's got to be everybody. We just have to have it for everybody. And if we have it for everybody, everything will be just fine. You heard it, Larry Ellison talked about this. Everyone will be on their best behavior because they know they're being surveilled 24/7, 365. That's what they're saying to us. Now, again, why do these companies feel the need they need to do this? Now, of course, they do a lot of things like selling data and what have you. But they have no right to do this. This is completely uncalled for. Now, this proposal would reportedly require tech companies such as Apple, there you go, and Google, there you go, to implement stricter age verification systems at the device level. So just think about that. You're using a Google search engine. You're using a Google email address. Using an Apple iPhone, for instance. All these phones are going to come with these age verification systems already installed on them. You won't have an option to do otherwise. Under that consistent framework, users will then be required to verify their age and identity during device setup. So again, right away, just like almost like a fingerprint, when you set up that phone, you are setting up for you, your person, and it stays with you the entire time. So they know exactly who you are that has access to the phone. Obviously, the camera can scan your irises. We see that at our airports all the time. That's why I always opt out of going through the x-ray system. Again, call me crazy all you want. By the way, the x-rays are bad for you too, by the way, folks. Just understand that. But I'm not going to go through and do this. I'm not going to get x-rayed. I'm not going to have my irises scanned. They have no right to do that. So I got patted down like a criminal when I opt out of it. Okay, whatever. It doesn't matter to me. But I'm not going through it. I'm opting out. And by the way, if more people did that, we wouldn't have this TSA garbage every time we go to the airport. We have to be treated like criminals every time we enter an airport. But I digress. But here we go. They want to gain unrestricted access to the smartphones, to the tablets, to the messaging services. So again, everybody you talk to. We see this take place inside the United States. Streaming platforms and internet content. So anything you look up, anything you stream, any social media website, any messaging service, iMessage or what is it called? WhatsApp or whatever it is called? I don't know. Whatever, it doesn't matter. But everything will be controlled in a way that documents every single thing you do. Any purchase you make on the internet, they'll figure it out. They'll figure out how you do it. They'll figure out what you buy, what you like to buy, how often you buy that, how much you spend. When you open up your bank account, they see exactly what you got. This is exactly what they want to do. And like clockwork, look what it says next. The plan comes as Google prepares to introduce digital identification capabilities through Google Wallet. There you go, folks. And let me ask you this. If the government can control all this through these private corporations, what's to say they can't come in and say, you know what? You made this comment on Instagram. You made this comment on Facebook. You made this comment on TikTok. We're going to go into your Google Wallet right now, and we're going to shut that off for you. You don't have any more access to your bank account now. God forbid they go to digital currency in the UK, which, again, they're desperately trying to do. You see how this will get more and more out of control as time goes on. This is what is complete and utter control. This is what tyranny is. This is 1984. This isn't 1776. But this is what they want for us. This is how they can control you. You're not going to go to a protest that the government doesn't approve of. They'll simply get to your phone. They'll scan all the phones in the region. They can do that, by the way. With the cell phone towers, they can ping who's in which certain area, and they can shut all those phones out. They can scan all those phones. They know exactly where you are, again, because the phone is designated to you. And again, it records all the data around you, the microphone, the audio, the picture, the visual. So they know exactly where you are and who has access to the phone. Don't think they can do that? Of course they can. And they could say, you know what? You were at a protest, let's say, and we don't like that protest, so therefore your Google Wallet's going to be shut off for the next 3 days. You say, well, I don't have any cash. I can't get access to... Well, I'm sorry. 3 days, that's it. And if you do this again, by the way, it'll be shut off for 7 days. And it gets worse. And, oh, by the way, your social credit score, which they have in China too, yeah, that's going to go down too every time we have to shut your phone off. Don't think it can happen, folks. It's happening right in front of your eyes, and no one's saying a damn thing about it. So we should be very much up in arms about this, because what takes place in Europe comes to the United States soon thereafter. So the way Europe looks with its immigration, that's coming to the United States very, very soon, if it's not already here already. So we've got to be very much aware of everything that they're trying to do, what they try to implement, the spying that takes place. This all needs to be addressed. Why it's not, I have no idea. But this is where we are. So they'll hide behind things like the Britain's Online Safety Act, for instance, which, again, mandates these age checks for certain categories of online content. But this is going to get much, much more out of control as time goes on. That's just the way it works. And like clockwork, it says here, the system would allow users to upload government-issued identification documents, so any national ID, right? In the United States, think of a driver's license or what have you, and verify themselves using biometric facial scans. And by the way, once they scan that face, anywhere you go where they have these CCTVs, right? You go to Disneyland, you see those all over the place. They scan you right to a police station right then and there. They know exactly where you are at any given time. It's a police state. It's complete control. And it needs to be shut down right away. Hopefully the people in the UK, if there's any alpha males left, hopefully they will shut this down right away. I don't know Sir Keir Starmer's future as Prime Minister or his party. I don't know that Nigel Farage, if his party gains control soon, as it seems like they may, if he will go through with this, and maybe he'll shut that down. I don't know. But both parties in the UK are all about this. Not the Reform Party, I don't believe, but certainly the Conservatives, certainly the Labour Party. They're definitely all for this. They want this. They're both pushing for it. And nothing seems to be getting done. But again, the growing concern over this is becoming much, much more noticeable because it's being put under scrutiny much, much more. And that's why I want to tell you about this, because I want to warn you about this. Stop trading your security or your fear of you need someone else to protect you to give up some of your rights. It's never going to work out. Look what takes place with TSA. You think, oh, well, good. I'm getting scanned every time I go to the airport. Thank God I'm safe. Thank God no one's going to try to get in there. By the way, how many people have gotten into the airports to try to cause any type of strife in the United States since 9/11? How many? How many people have been stopped in an airport? How many people has this stopped from committing, again, a terrorist or heinous act against people in the airport or on an airplane? What do you think? They just don't show up anymore now, all of a sudden? So we live in this police state world, folks, and sadly it's getting much, much worse, not much, much better. I want to move on now to an article out of Politico, and again change gears over to where Trump is right now in this war with Iran. We did end up striking Iran yesterday evening over the, again, attack over the AH-64 Apache helicopter, which was then said to be hit by the Iranian government, though the Iranian government has said that they did not do this. So it's interesting to see that take place. The alleged issue is that it was hit with a Shahed drone. Now, I want to say this to you very closely and carefully. A Shahed drone is 11 by, I think, 8.2 feet. The wingspan is 8.2 feet. The length of it is 11 feet. It's pretty big. It's 440 pounds. It's not something light. And what they're saying is, this is what they were saying on, I believe, Fox News this morning when I was listening. It said that the drone was lodged between the two pilots in the helicopter, and somehow they got out of the helicopter, which, again, I don't know how that would work. You cannot eject yourself from a helicopter. You have to evacuate it through the sides. It's not like you're in a jet where they can eject you and your seat jumps out with you and parachutes to the ground, which we've seen many times in the past. So I don't think this is likely to be plausible at all, because a Shahed drone moves from like point A to point B. So in other words, if I'm standing here, right, and you're 500 miles away and you say, hey, I want to hit where Gerace is standing, that Shahed drone is digitally, I guess you'd say, tracked or programmed to hit that certain target. So in other words, it goes from point A to point B. It's going to hit that exact spot. It doesn't just travel to where, let's say, a helicopter is going, right? It doesn't work like that. So again, I really don't understand this. By the way, the explosion would be massive if that were to happen. So if it was actually hit with a Shahed drone, it would certainly blow up the entire thing and certainly cause, obviously, the lives on board to be most likely lost. The idea that it would hit and be lodged into the helicopter, I don't know how that would even work as is. So I don't think it was a Shahed drone that caused that. I don't know if this is a false flag to get the United States into a greater conflict with Iran now, saying, hey, look, the Iranians just did this to us. Now, why was the helicopter even in the Strait of Hormuz? Certainly we're at a time where there's no combat right now. It's beyond me. We weren't told the mission, as I explained to you yesterday. But the United States has, again, retaliated by striking inside Iran now. This comes from CENTCOM right now, that this is taking place. But Trump still comes out and says that we're still close to a deal. How many times do we have to hear this? Now, I haven't looked at the market report today yet. I think I'm going to do that right now, as I'm talking to you. We're seeing the Dow dropping 700 points. Yep, because again, Trump is doubling down on attacking Iran again. People don't like to hear that. We're seeing Brent crude slowly going back up, $94.25 per barrel right now. West Texas Intermediate, $91.41. Again, they're both up over 3% today. And that'll continue to go up too, as Trump says, we're on with them. We're going to retaliate in kind. So again, I don't know. We don't have any confirmation that, yes, this definitely came from the Iranians. We do know that something took down this plane, again, whether it was mechanical or whether, again, it was some type of munition. I just don't believe it's a Shahed drone. I really don't believe that. They're not made to hit a moving target, so it doesn't make much of any sense whether they would fly in the pathway of this drone. But here's the problem we have now. He comes out and says nothing changes where the deal stands right now. Yes, of course it does. You're now attacking Iran yet again during a so-called ceasefire. I call it a ceasefire in name only because it never stands. Certainly doesn't stand with Israel and any of its countries that it has ceasefires with, which again is a major problem for any deal moving forward. We have given them nothing to go forth with these negotiations. Therefore, I see no deal in sight. How many times are we going to hear that we're a couple days away, a couple weeks away? Takes too long. Remember he said that to Kirsten Welker on Meet the Press the other day? Said it takes too long. Oh, well, I got out of it in 2018. It just takes a while to get things moving. Okay, then why would you get us out of that negotiation with the JCPOA? Allow them to have the ability to do whatever the hell they wanted to, if they're so dangerous. But now we're close, we're very close, and now we're going to start attacking them again? Again, I think it's all just rhetoric coming from Trump. I don't think he's actually speaking to anybody. Maybe we're speaking to the Pakistanis. That's a possibility, but I don't believe we're close to any type of negotiation. Certainly not close to any type of deal. We're not going to give them the frozen assets. We're not going to give them, what else do they want? The relief of sanctions. We're certainly not moving our naval blockade, which, why is it there in the first place? We know that ships have been traversing the naval blockade every single day. Now, they're not telling you that on the mainstream media, but that's what's taking place. And so we have to ask ourselves the question, what's the purpose of all this? When does this end? How does this end? Does it end on the battlefield? Because if it ends on the battlefield, we have to get ready for another wave of attacks. And by the way, as I said to you before, I said this is probably going to get worse before it gets any better. And I think this is going to start to uptick the retaliation from the Iranians back and forth now. I think we'll start to see that more and more as time goes on. I really do believe that, unfortunately. And again, I had high hopes that maybe we could get something to work on, but again, it seems that we are just not going to do that. And I think Trump understands too that Netanyahu is the one that is calling the shots here. Netanyahu, again, just over the weekend, decided to, again, attack the Iranians. And this is part of the big problem that's going on right now. If Israel's not on board, we have no peace. Israel wants us to continue to attack Iran, so therefore they will not let up on their attacks on southern Lebanon. It's just not going to happen. And so long as that happens, the Iranians will not come to the table and make any deal regarding any type of nuclear weapon. You can take it to the bank and cash it because, again, I know inflation is up, folks. We're going to talk about that in just a minute, too. So there we go with that. It seems like there is no diplomacy. The Iranians certainly want that. Their parliamentary speaker, Galibaf, said, "We prefer the language of diplomacy, but we speak other languages far more fluidly. Break your commitments, and we'll switch to what we speak best." This is coming from the Iranians. Now, does this sound like a country whose military is defunct? Whose economy is in the can? Who's begging, desperately wanting to make a deal with the United States? Has no type of air defense whatsoever, right? We're told their air defense systems are, kaput. Navy, non-existent. We know they have these small boats, these miniature submarines too, by the way, which they use. We think because we sank, a couple ships of theirs, that it's now over. We're told that their stockpiles are down 22% of what they had on the first day of the war. Again, it's a big lie. The numbers we're getting from the Iranians are in the 80% range. So they certainly have a lot because Trump said 21 to 22% was still a lot. So therefore, they have roughly 60% more of what he said. That means they have a lot of missiles left. Never forget, the Iranians understand this is a fight for their survival as a people, as a sovereign people. I'm not coming out in favor of the Iranian government. I'm just telling you this is how they think. This is what they believe. Now, they're not going to simply kowtow to President Trump because he tells them to. They're not going to do that. And so I don't see an off-ramp to this anymore. I don't see an end to this anymore. I think this will continue to fight on for quite some time. What we're told will take 2 weeks now. How many times now? And it's like COVID all over again. 2 weeks to slow the spread. Now we're at, 2 weeks now to make a deal? Then it's another 2 weeks. Another 2 weeks. Then it's another month. Hey, we might be done by summer. Get ready for the fall. And this type of language, this type of put-off. And by the way, you can only control the markets so much, folks. Certainly, as time goes on, I think people will really start to get upset because you're seeing, as a result of the Strait of Hormuz, which the Iranians militarily control right now. By the way, if we have no military, how are they controlling the Strait of Hormuz? Does anyone in the Trump administration would they like to answer that for me? I can't figure it out. But we're seeing the raising global energy prices, the disruption of shipments and other commodities that come out of the Persian Gulf, the aluminum, the helium, the urea, the nitrogen, liquefied natural gas. So many things come out of this region that are crucial for the global economy, and they're not coming out. So I'll just leave it to you like that, folks, because once that supply dries up, nothing's there. Once those crops that should be planted today are not there in 6 months. So when you go to the grocery stores in December and say, hey, why are there no strawberries? Hey, I like blueberries. Where are they? Oh, we didn't have the fertilizer. Oh, geez, didn't Jerry say that? Oh, yeah, Jerry did say that. Yeah. Everyone else told me to stop being a panicking. Okay. Again, folks, I come with the facts. I don't come with the nonsense, as so many do, unfortunately. All right, folks, let's go on now. Let's talk about the ramifications of this conflict, which, again, I told you things are going to get worse before they get better. I think we'll see the attacks coming from the Iranians very soon because, again, once they're hit, they tend to react in kind. I think we'll be exchanging attacks very, very soon as this escalates. And you'll see Israel continue to do what they're doing inside Lebanon as time goes on. Here we go, folks. Again, I hate to act like Nostradamus, but here we go. Let's take a look at this. Year-over-year inflation hit a 3-year high. Isn't that great? Of 4.2% in May. Who told you that over a month ago? Oh, yeah, I did. I said it's going to hit 4.2% very soon. Here we go. Year-over-year, what you were paying last May for goods, you're now paying 4.2% more. How many of you got a 4.2% rate? More than a 4.2% raise last year, by the way. Hopefully you did. If you did, you're okay. If you did not, you're obviously losing purchasing power, which is not good. And again, the reason for this is the Iran war pushed the energy prices higher. Once you offset the oil prices so dramatically, everything else has to go up in kind. So whether it be the price of the pump, the price of the grocery store, the price at the retail store you go to, the price when you buy this and that, everything costs more because it costs more to get it to where it needs to be. Diesel prices are up significantly. And as a result, the price of everything else has got to go up because you have to make a profit, folks. Otherwise, you go out of business. And, while I wish I was wrong about this, I think you're just seeing the tip of the iceberg with this 4.2% in May, which is nowhere near our 2% target. So, as I said to you before, we're not meeting expectations to bring down the interest rates, not by a long shot. There's going to be a lot more time now to bring it down because, again, this doesn't just get solved overnight. Not by a long shot. This is going to take a long time for prices to go down. However, what we're hearing now from President Trump now is that everything's honky-dory. Everything's going to come right down once this war ends. When's the war going to end? We don't know. But let's listen to President Trump now. This is what he was asked yesterday in the White House about prices.
Inflation to come down between that.
Oh, when the war is over?
Yes.
It's coming down.
I know you can't.
It's going to come down like a rock. And again, we're taking out millions, which I'm just announcing today for the first time. But we've been taking out millions of barrels of oil. Millions of barrels. Every night we took out oil. But now I'm going to tell you because they just figured it out. So now that they figured it out, I can tell you. It was very hard for me. I wanted to say it so badly, but I didn't want to ruin it. But it was very hard. But millions of barrels of oil has come out. And that's why it's at $85, $90 a barrel instead of $250. But we have the greatest military in the world, the toughest military in the world, just the best in every way. Nobody even close. There's no military that's even close. I rebuilt it during my first term. I'm using it now. When this conflict is over, Todd said, please call it a conflict, right? As opposed to the word war. He didn't like the word war, but it's sort of a conflict. It's a military operation. When it's over, you will see oil drop to where it was before.
When is this going to happen? Hey, when this war ends, don't worry, everything's going to come right down. Blink of an eye, everything's down. Flick of a light switch, everything comes down. That's not how the economy works. And we haven't seen the supply chain bottlenecking yet from the oil prices. Now, one of the things he says in here, he talks about the strategic petroleum reserves, which, by the way, if you were listening to my show, you know that we're already digging into that right now because he wants to bring the price down, just like Joe Biden did, by the way. And to his credit, though, Trump did fill it up in his first term. What did Biden do when the oil prices got out of control during his tenure? He dipped into it. What's Trump doing right now? He's dipping into it to try to alleviate some of the pain at the pump. Right? The short-term pain you're supposed to be adhering to as a good ardent patriot, folks. Don't forget that. This is not going to be overnight, this is solved. This is going to take several months after this war ends and after the Strait of Hormuz returns to regular programming. But look at this. Even the Labor Department is saying that the energy index accounted for over 60% of the increase in consumer price index from the previous month. The month-over-month change in the CPI was slightly cooled in May than April. Prices rose at 0.5% in May from a month earlier. It was a slowing from the 0.6% in April. There you go, folks. And 0.9% in March. So everything is slowly trickling up. You know, you pay 0.6% in one month, 0.9 in another month, 0.5 in another. Seems insignificant, but over time, those small percentages, they rise, they catch up to you. And all of a sudden, you're like, wait a minute, what's going on here? I used to be able to pay for all this with, one check. Now I've got to do more. Now I'm struggling to make ends meet. And by the way, economists always look at core prices as a better predictor for the future. Inflationary numbers. And that's what we're seeing right now. That's taking place in real time. So don't say I didn't warn you. Don't say I didn't warn you. Right now, we have a 4-year high of gas now at $4.56 a gallon in late May. There you go. Someplace I'm told it's down a little bit. Okay, I haven't seen that here where I am. Certainly haven't seen that in California. So whoever's got the lower gas prices, God bless you. But most of the people are paying significantly higher, folks. That's just the truth of the matter. Yep, May CPI numbers showing an increase of 3.9% in the month of May, up from 3.8% in April. There you go. Yep, there it is, folks. No sign of it ending. Again, even if the war ends today, you have several months for this reversal of this disastrous policy. Certainly in the global economy takes place. So Trump can take out the oil. Not saying he can't. By the way, we only have about 411 million barrels of oil. So how many millions of barrels of oil is he releasing every day? How much longer can we do this? We're at the lowest level for the Strategic Petroleum Reserve since 1984. And I want to say that's very significant to you because 1984 was the year that President Reagan created it. In case of emergency, obviously blunders like the Iran war, which I think is going to be one of the biggest blunders we've seen in American military history for sure, because of the offshoot it has on everything else around us. And the ramifications coming from this closure of the Strait of Hormuz. I don't want to say closure because, again, ships do come through, the ones that pay the Iranians, but a lot of ships were in standstill for quite a while. They control the Strait, they will continue to control the Strait, and they will control the Strait after a deal is made with the United States, if that ever does happen. And folks, since we're talking about the war in the Middle East, let's talk about what's taking place over in Israel. And I want to highlight this to you. This comes from Israel 365 News. And I saw this is an opinion paper, nonetheless, but this is the attitude inside of Israel for several people. And the article is entitled, "It's Time to Say It, Gaza's Population Must Go." Okay. So what does that mean exactly? Gaza's population must go? What does that mean in particularly? What is that? Are we going to get rid of them? We're going to give them some money so they go someplace else? What's happening right now? I'm very concerned about this. Shouldn't you be? I think so. Now, again, there's some back and forth here. They talk about October 6th. They refer everything to Adolf Hitler, of course, in this article. Okay, fine. But here's how it starts off. It says, every Israeli official who has said it out loud has been denounced, sanctioned, and threatened with international prosecution. The UN condemns it. European governments issue stern statements. The American State Department clearly clears its throat disapprovingly. They're all wrong and they know it. So unless you want to go forth with ethnic cleansing, which is exactly what they're referring to in this article, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. They use every justification they come up with. Oh, Palestinians are told at a young age that every Jew is subhuman, this and that. And so the way to solve this is to simply just get rid of all of them. Now, they don't say how they're going to get rid of them. Doesn't say that. So here's how it ends. Gaza's population must go peacefully, with assistance, but permanently somewhere else. That is not next to the Jewish state or the United States. Oh, thank you for throwing that in there for us. We don't want them coming across our border to do in Central Park what they did at the Nova Music Festival or fire rockets into American cities. We don't hate them any more than we hate rabid animals for the disease that makes them dangerous to everything around them. So that's how we're legitimizing this. They're just a rabid animal. They're right next to us. Hey, you gotta hate it, right? They have proven beyond any reasonable argument that they cannot live next to us without trying to destroy us. And they must, so they must live somewhere else. That's not a controversial conclusion. It's just an honest one. So what is this person? Let me see what his name is. I try not to. Bill Levinson. That's what Bill Levinson wrote in Israel 365 News. What are we going to do with them then? Where are they going to go? What if they refuse to leave? What do we do then? Well, we know at least 100,000 of them have been killed since this conflict occurred since October 7th. Where are they going to go now? What's going to happen? How do we reconcile this? And by the way, how do you get around international law? That pesky thing that sometimes the United States doesn't like, certainly Israel doesn't like. What are we going to do then? It's a complete violation of UN Charter Article 242. What's going to happen? I mean, do we just say that, the occupation of this territory, of which is designated for the Palestinians, the Gazans, is just simply okay to take this land from them now? What about the West Bank? Do they take that too from them? Now, in Article 242, it affirms that a just and lasting peace in the Middle East must include the following: the withdrawal of Israeli armed forces from territories occupied in the recent conflict, termination of all claims or states of belligerency, and respect for the sovereignty, territorial integrity, political independence of all states in the area. Well, that's not taking place in Gaza and the West Bank, is it, folks? Certainly not taking place in southern Lebanon. This resolution came as the result of the Six-Day War. Remember the Six-Day War? But clearly the occupation is very much there because what the Israelis are doing, the IDF is doing, to the Palestinians in these regions. Certainly the Israeli settlers in the West Bank have no problem taking homes, setting fires to Christian cemeteries, olive orchards, and what have you. Olive fields, I think, is the proper term. That's okay. No one does a damn thing about it. So where do we draw the line here? How do we allow a nation to come in and say, you know what? We have decided that you're just too much of a burden to us. We don't want you here anymore. So therefore, we're going to kick your asses out and we're going to take your land. Does anyone not see a problem with all this, folks? And you point to October 7th, which again I condemned. Anyone that was killed that day, anyone that was taken hostage, I condemn that. But nobody talks about the 12,000 hostages that Israel was holding at the exact time of that event. How come no one talks about that? How come no one talks about mowing the lawn? Where every so often the IDF goes into Gaza and kills some people, just to keep them in line. Nobody talks about that. It's not important. Just what Hamas does when they retaliate. That's something we have to talk about. That's something we have to condemn. Same thing with Hezbollah. Hezbollah cannot launch missiles into northern Israel. That's obviously against the rules. But when we go into southern Lebanon, that's totally fine. We kill 3,600 people. It's okay. Don't worry about it. Displace 1 million people. Say that we're taking their land. That's okay. You've got to look at history, folks. You have to look at who is in charge here. What's taking place? Why, for example, nothing's being done about this? Nothing is being said about this? Why only shows like mine tell you the truth about this? Again, we talked about self-defense in the beginning of this program. Where's the justification for self-defense at this point, folks? Almost 3 years after the fact, you're still killing people in this region? Not allowing humanitarian aid, arresting people in flotillas, trying to bring in humanitarian aid to the Palestinians because food is not going through because you're not allowing it? Yeah, something's definitely wrong here. And saying it out in the open that you want ethnic cleansing, no good. That's it for today's broadcast, folks. Thank you for being here. Enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you back here tomorrow for more groundbreaking news on the next Marco Dre Show. Until then, be good, stay busy, and God bless.